This is James Corbett of CorbettReport.com, welcoming you back to Economics 101, and today I'm honored to be joined on the line by Catherine Austin Fitts, who was a former managing director of a Wall Street investment bank and assistant secretary of housing in the first Bush administration. She now runs the Solari Report and Solari audio seminars and a blog on Solari.com, and it's an honor to have you on the program today, Catherine Austin Fitts. Thank you for joining me.
I'm such a fan of yours. It's a privilege to be on.
Well, that's an absolutely flattering thing to hear. Well, Catherine, I wanted to talk today about a concept that I think is worrying to a lot of my viewers. Of course, we all know that we've been brought to the very brink of an economic collapse, the likes of which we've really never seen before in society. And we've been brought here by the financial terrorists on Wall Street and in the City of London, who have engineered crises after crises. For example, the subprime mortgage housing bubble, which was burst, and the derivatives ticking time bomb, which is perhaps going to burst. And it seems that the only option that we're being offered as a society is to yield even more of our power and more of our sovereignty to the very banksters who have brought us to this brink of collapse. However, I think you have an alternative idea, and I heard on a recent radio interview you had the idea of people taking back the power from the banksters by merely shunning the financial elite and the financial system that we've been placed into. This is a fascinating concept, so can you elaborate on that for us?
James, we have a remarkably leveraged financial system, and in a highly leveraged financial system, the person who makes the decision as to where the money goes has real power. And I'm always struck at how the average retail investor or bank depositor or consumer doesn't begin to fathom how much power a small group of them have if they exercise their choice in a way that impacts the leverage in the system. So, for example, in 2004, a dollar going into the banking system ultimately leveraged to $164. And if you look at the profits that roll off loans from that, and the fact that it's leveraged in the stock market, further with debt, further with derivatives, most people say to me, well, my bank account's very small. They don't begin to understand the leverage that comes from that. And so we have incredible power to impact where money goes, what it does, and to improve the behavior of institutions, because generally what happens is as we shift our attitude and take the attitude, there's a Roman emperor who said money has no smell. The minute we decide, well, wait a minute, money does smell, and I want my money to go into places that don't smell, and we shift, millions of institutions have to shift with it. I've sat in many a boardroom or in the sort of decision making in Washington, and the attitude among many people is there's no constituency for financial responsibility. There's no constituency to do the ethical thing. Well, the minute we create a constituency that's prepared to not wait for the elections, but exercise our vote right now with our money in the marketplace, it could have a dramatic change.
It certainly can, and I think there are many ways in which we can do that, and we can withdraw our time and money and energy from this system, and not necessarily only in a monetary sense. But what are some of the ways that, for example, someone who's a small business owner or a small investor can really take back their power from that system?
Well, the first thing is, what are all the institutions you transact with? So who's your bank? Who's your accountant? Who's your attorney? Who is your brokerage account? Where are you investing your money, in what types of enterprises and companies? So if you go through all the transactions that we make, either as a business person, as a consumer, as any chooser of financial services, and simply purchases, there's dramatic impact that we can have. Now, the power of this thing is not just, James, our ability to withdraw, but where we go. Let me give you an example. You will still find in the United States thousands of very hardworking, honest bankers, particularly who've left the big banks and gone to smaller banks, either started new small banks or sort of moved into the community banks. And you have a lot of really wonderful people who have been doing the ethical thing, but the crowd hasn't supported them. So as we shift money to those institutions and under the governance of or management of those people, we give them energy. So the critical question is not just who you're leaving, but more importantly, who are you giving your money to? Who are you empowering in the marketplace to govern and manage your money for you? I often think of it as a body and the way blood goes through the body. Are we moving the blood to the head and to the brain and the heart and the lungs, or are we moving it to the toes? Right now, if you go through the balance sheet and financial statements for the average American household, we are circulating all of our money to the toes. And the important thing is how we're going to start to feel once we start circulating the blood to the heart, the lungs, the brain.
That's exactly it, and that's a very good analogy. So on that note, why don't you tell people about the work that you do over at Solari.com?
Sure. I do two things. I publish the Solari Report, which is a briefing. It's really a high-level briefing of the kind you used to get when you were in Wall Street or Washington. A high-level briefing on what's going on in the world today as it relates to personal and family wealth. And we have it's divided into a couple parts. We do a section called Money and Markets, a section called Ask Catherine. We get a huge number of questions and try and respond to those. And then I usually interview someone who's an expert on something that relates to building personal and family wealth. And then I have a section called Let's Go to the Movies. In America, James, fact is fiction and fiction is fact. So people are constantly asking me, how does the economy really work? How does Wall Street really work? How does the system really work? And I use movies to explain that. And then I'm also an investment advisor. I have a company, Solari Investment Advisory Services, and that's what I do by day. And to stay current for both the Solari Report and investment advisory work, I keep a blog if you come to Solari.com and go to the blog, you'll find our blog, and I'm constantly keeping abreast and posting things that relate again to personal and family wealth.
Well, Catherine, I think the work you're doing is so important, and the message that you're bringing to us today is extremely important. But I think one of the things that we're fighting is a defeatist attitude on the part of many people who really do think that the system is all engineered on an international scale and that the average person has no power in that system. So just as a final word today, what do you say to those people who have that impression?
Well, I agree that the system is engineered at an international scale, and I also believe that people who've been centralizing power have been doing it for decades, if not centuries, and have accumulated a lot of resources. So at times it can seem overwhelming. But having worked in Washington and Wall Street, I understand how fragile the system is, number one, and number two, how responsive it can be if it thinks that the people are starting to leave the ship. And so I think the average person underestimates the power they have, but it's critical that all solutions start with reversing the drain in my life. So it's critical, James, whenever you talk about solutions, to say, okay, now how can I go about changing things that give me energy? Because that's the problem. Our personal and family wealth, whether it's our health or our money, is being drained. And solutions start with me reversing that in my life and doing it in a way that help you reverse that in your life, and we go from there. And the problem with the centralization is it's shrinking wealth, and so all solutions expand wealth. And the reality is the way to save the planet is to save yourself in a way that helps save the planet. So there's really a way to do it. It's one of those sort of and things, but it can be done. And the sort of the little secret I know from having had the experience that I've been lucky enough to have in my life is this thing is shrinking the pie, and there's plenty of money and plenty of wealth if we'll just re-engineer it and start to decentralize in a wealth-building way instead of centralizing. So there's a way to do it. It can work.
All right, an important message and one that's unfortunately underrepresented in even the alternative media. So my hat's off to you for all the work that you're doing bringing this message to the people. Catherine Austin Fitts, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day, James.